Welcome to the lecture on art vocabulary, and here are the 7 words that I'm going to take you through. Aesthetic, depict, genre, icon, vivid, portrait, and sculpture. So here's the first word, aesthetic. Aesthetic. Note the spelling at the start, A and E together, aesthetic. An aesthetic thing looks good. It's pleasing to the eye, not necessarily beautiful, but well put together, and people will look at it and they will appreciate it. Here's an aesthetic picture. To me, anyway. I think it's nicely put together. The colours go well together. To me, it's aesthetic. We chose this furniture for its aesthetic appeal. So the furniture looked nice. The bridge is aesthetically appealing. So the bridge actually looks nice. It's well designed. Monet's paintings are aesthetically pleasing. And some collocations for aesthetic: aesthetic quality, aesthetic value, aesthetically pleasing. This is the adverb use of aesthetic. Aesthetic appeal. And here's the adverb again, aesthetically. Aesthetically. And some synonyms for aesthetic: artistic, creative, pleasing, artful as well. And your next word is depict. Depict. Depict means to show something. If you depict someone or something, you show it in an artistic way, such as in a movie, or in a photograph, or in a painting. So here's a painting, and in this painting, this painting depicts a lighthouse by the sea, and some seagulls as well. So here's the word depict again, and you can see part of the word picture at the end of the word depict, so that helps you remember it. Depict. Here's some example sentences. The painting depicts the Battle of Waterloo. St. Nicholas is often depicted as Father Christmas. And the third sentence is a slightly more general version of the word depict. It's more like describe. The government tried to depict the protesters as violent, so the government didn't like the protesters. They told people they were violent. Another word for this use of depict is characterize. They characterize the protesters as violent. Some collocations we depict in: you depict somebody in a movie or in a picture. Depict as. You can depict a scene. You can depict life. Depict is a verb, so you can have depicts, depicting, depicted, and to turn depict into a noun, you say depiction, depiction. Note the different pronunciation there. Depiction. And some synonyms for depict: show, illustrate, characterize, again, is the more general meaning of the word, and describe as well is quite general. Portray, portray, and represent, represent. Your next word is genre. Genre. Not genre. Genre. A genre is a particular type of art, or a particular type of music or literature, a particular type of movie, like science fiction movies. The word genre actually comes from the Latin word gens, which is a Latin word which means family. So it's where the word genetics comes from as well. So it's to do with families. So a family of movies, a family of art is a genre. Horror movies are a consistently popular genre. Not with me though, but lots of people like horror movies. The uniformity of Facebook games is probably a sign of the genre's infancy. Unlike other books in its genre, Unspeakable Things is markedly uninterested in converting its readers. Just comparing it to other books in its genre, you can have a literary genre, artistic genre. You can invent a genre if you're the first one to make it. If you come up with a genre, you invent it. If you spread a genre, you spawn it. You spawn a genre. That's another common collocation. So genre, it's a noun, of course, so you can have genres. And some synonyms for genre: type, kind, family, brand, style, and class. Your next word is icon. Icon. Not econ, but icon. An icon is a symbol. It can be an object or even a person, but it represents an idea. It symbolises an idea. It can be religious, that's where the word originally comes from, but also it can be non-religious. So for example, Elvis Presley was a cultural icon. He represented the rock and roll era. He symbolised the rock and roll era of the 1950s, so he's a cultural icon. The painting of Mary is a famous religious icon. David Beckham. I hope you know him. David Beckham is as much a fashion icon as a football player, although he doesn't play football now. This is an older sentence. J.K. Rowling is an icon for young female writers. She symbolises something to them, how you can be successful as a writer. Religious icon is a very common collocation, but so is cultural icon, sporting icon. Icon can turn into an adjective, so you could have iconic status. So David Beckham has iconic status. Elvis Presley has iconic status. So icon here is an icon, but the adjective is iconic. And some synonyms for icon: symbol, legend. There's a slightly different meaning, legend, but it could be used as a synonym. An idol as well. Elvis Presley was an idol. Your next word is vivid. Vivid. If you describe memories and descriptions of something as vivid, then they are very clear and detailed. Okay, so if you have a vivid memory, you can remember lots of details about it. Colours can be vivid as well, if they're bright and clear and stand out. And here's a frog. I think it's a frog. It's an amphibian of some sort anyway, and it has very vivid colours. It's a vividly coloured frog. His poems are full of vivid imagery, is one example sentence. Her paintings are characterised by vivid colours. To tell that story requires a vivid summary of day-to-day events. So it's a story where you have to have lots of details, day-to-day events, lots of details to make it vivid. Some typical collocations with vivid: vivid memory, vivid picture, vivid imagination. Children often have vivid imaginations. A vivid colour. So vivid. You can turn that into an adverb: vividly. Vividly. And some synonyms for vivid: intense, powerful, detailed, brilliant, colourful, and memorable as well. Our next word is portrait. Portrait. A portrait simply is a painting or a photograph of a person, usually focusing on the face. So here's a portrait of a young girl, just focusing on the face. He was asked to paint a portrait of the Queen. A self-portrait is a painting that you make of yourself. And his biography provides a fascinating portrait of the 19th century politician Gladstone. Now here, the word portrait means more in the sense of description. Some typical collocations: portrait of. You can paint a portrait. You often find portraits in a portrait gallery. So an art gallery that has lots of portraits is a portrait gallery, and you can make a self-portrait. And it's a noun, you can turn it into portraits, of course. And some synonyms: painting. Representation is a more general use of the word. Depiction. Account. Characterization. And likeness. So our next word is sculpture. Sculpture. A sculpture is a work of art produced by shaping something out of substances, like metal or clay or stone or wood. Now it can show anything, it can be of anything. So for example, here is a sculpture of a boat in Reykjavik in Iceland. But it can also be abstract. Here is an abstract sculpture in, I believe, New York. It doesn't really show anything in particular. Sculptures, though, can also be of people or animals, but we often, when we talk about sculptures of people, we talk about them as statues. So a statue is often of a person, but a sculpture can be of anything. People or boats or dogs or abstract things. So here are some example sentences. The park was full of sculptures of animals and people. The museum contains a collection of ancient Greek sculptures. The college offers courses in sculpture and painting. You often carve a sculpture, unveil a sculpture. So when a sculpture is new, and for the first time, you're going to show it to people, it's often covered in some cloth. And when you take off the cloth, you unveil it, you unveil the sculpture. You can make a sculpture. And when we're talking about the people who make sculptures, we say sculpture by. It was a sculpture by someone. So sculpture is a noun, of course. So you can turn it into a plural noun with S on the end. But it's also a verb, to sculpture something. So you can say sculpturing, sculptured. The person who makes a sculpture is known as a sculptor. Sculptor. And some synonyms for sculpture: carve, form, chisel. Chisel is something you often do with stone. You chisel a piece of stone into a sculpture. You can fashion something, often with your hands. And you can often shape things with your hands too. Or you can model something. You can model a sculpture. So there are your 7 art words: aesthetic, depict, genre, icon, vivid, portrait, and sculpture.